Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Jeff from Umpire Zone. I hope that you're doing well on this morning. Today's video is going to cover specific areas of Rule 2 in the baseball rule book that are kind of relevant for officials. There actually are a lot of definitions that are in Rule 2 that aren't too relevant in terms of what you have to do on the field as an official. However, there are a few interesting things about Rule 2 that I want to that I want to go over with you this morning. So I'll kind of go alphabetically. I got the rule book right here. This is the 2019 NFHS rule book. So obviously some of the variants will be different than MLB rules, but there actually are quite a few rules within this book that are pretty much exactly the same. So like I said, things that are relevant to officiating. A balk, for example, you know that a balk is something that a pitcher does to deceive a runner. And when that happens, all runners on the bases are awarded a base. I will be having a separate video on balks. I've got a lot of things in the work. I've got my whiteboard full of ideas. Balks are definitely something that I plan on covering on this channel very, very soon. A base on balls, is one where runner gets ball four, batter, gets ball four and becomes a runner. Any runners that are forced to advance would advance. So if you got a runner on first and a runner on second, and somebody earns a walk, a base on balls, then all runners would advance. So there would be runners in first, second, and third. However, if there was a runner on third and the batter earns a walk, the runner on third is not forced to advance. He can advance in his own risk, of course, but he does not get home plate by default by the merit of his batter runner getting a walk. Intentional base on balls. It used to be the case that you had to throw 4 pitches for high school. It's been a long time now for high school ball where a coach can just say, I want that runner to that batter, to get first base. They can just say that, and then there they go, off to first base. A fair ball or a base hit, we know that of course a ball that makes it past first or third base within the confines of first and third base on the field is considered a fair ball. If it's on the fly, it has to land or touch a fielder within fair territory. I have another video, one I did early on in my channel, probably a couple of years ago at this point, where we discussed that a ball, basically where the ball is located, governs whether it's fair or foul. So if a fielder is in fair territory and tries to catch a ball, but the ball is actually in foul territory, it's a foul ball, even though the fielder was in fair territory. And obviously in reverse as well, if there's a fielder who kind of veers into foul territory, goes for a ball, and that ball is actually in fair territory or on the line or whatever the case may be, that's a fair ball. So it's always based on where the ball is located. The hardest call for you to make as a home plate umpire is that ball that's bounding over third base or first base. You only have a little bit of time to look at it, to see where it is and judge where it is, whether it's over the bag or on the line or whatever, whether it's fair or foul. Can be a very game making or breaking moment for one teamer and breaking for the other. So that's a tough call to make, and again, that's something to consider. Okay, batted ball, batter runner, bunts, catcher's box, those are kinds of things that, more like definitions of where they are. Although obviously one rule that concerns you as the home plate umpire, the catcher does have to be set up in the catcher's box, and that's kind of a loose rule, but obviously we don't want the catcher all the way out of the box on a pitch, because A, you're unprotected, and B, that's a balk. So the catcher does have to be set up in the box. Obviously the catcher is allowed some lateral movement during the pitch sequence to try to get his pitcher to locate, or her pitcher, the case may be, to locate the ball in the right spot. For conferences for high school. Now this is important for high school. This is kind of a relatively recent rule as far as conferences are concerned. A coach's charge conference, whenever they go to talk to the pitcher and they do not take the pitcher out of the game, you can, of course, I believe the limit for most high schools, I don't know if there's a state difference or not, but 3 charge conferences is the limit, and then obviously in extra innings, each coach is afforded an extra charge conference to go along with that. Ball is dead. We know a dead ball is when there's no playing action. Either the umpires kill, actually all the time I should say, when there's a dead ball, it's because of the umpire. And obviously there's different causes of dead balls. That's for a future video as well. Games that are, foul tips. I have a video that also talks about foul tips. Foul tips can only be caught by the catcher. That's an old school ruling where the ball first goes to the catcher and then can be caught by somebody else. Only the catcher can catch a foul tip. I have a separate video. There's no umpire in the world that has ever been hit by a foul tip, no matter what. Okay, state association suspended games, things like that. Those are things you want to check in your rules. There's different rules. Sometimes there's just, obviously, if it's a tournament game, most states have automatic suspended game if you have to call a game due to darkness or weather, and the game hasn't finished its conclusion or come to a conclusion in the postseason for sure. That's most of the time going to be a suspended game, but there's obviously other rules that govern whether or not something is suspended or not. Interference is something that's defined in Rule 2. Interference obviously is, I'll read the rule. It says, offensive interference is an act by a team at bat which interferes with, obstructs, impedes, hinders, or confuses any fielder attempting to make a play, or when a runner creates a malicious contact with any fielder. Obviously, the malicious contact fact is up to umpire interpretation. The closest thing I ever had to that was when I had a runner coming from first to second base, and then it was a grounder to the second baseman. Second baseman kind of ran up to catch the ball, and he went one way. The fielder tried to go the same way. It was completely unintentional, but the runner, ended up obviously barreling over the fielder, and I ruled interference and also ruled double play. So the runner that was heading toward that heading toward first was also out, and that's just how that works. Interference, obviously, spectator interference, not very often in high school games. That's when a spectator interferes with, say, a fly ball outfield, something like that. It's in the rule book. It doesn't happen too often in high school baseball, but it is there. There's also follow-through interference when the catcher is hit by the bat on from a batter in the batter's box, and when that happens, the batter swings at the pitch. Bat hits the catcher trying to make a throw to put out a runner. That's follow-through interference. Batter or runner can be out depending on which amount of outs there are. If there's an obstruction, obstruction is not the same as interference, by the way. Obstruction is something the defensive team creates that hinders the advancement of a runner. Obstruction is one of those instances where it's umpire judgment as far as how much or how far the runner could get, and anything past that is at your own risk. So, a classic example is, let's say there's a pitcher trying to pick off a runner at first, and there's an overthrow, and the runner gets up and tries to run to second, but the fielder trying to get the ball obstructs him. Generally, you get a base for sure, but if the runner continues to go after third base and the throw beats the runner by 30 feet or something like that, you are certainly not going to be giving that runner third base. He is advancing at his own risk. He is out if he's tagged, but if he's trying to go to second and there's a close play at second, obviously you have to give him a base anyway, just by rule. But in those instances right there, he would certainly earn that base just based on the merits of the fact that he was obstructed. Your job, of course, as the umpire is to basically nullify whatever happened as a result of the obstruction. Oversliding, overrunning. This is something that was written into the rules, I believe last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, that if you overrun first base, you're heading to first base and you're safe at first. The old sort of procedure was that you would teach the runner to run past the base and then turn clockwise. That way they're turning to the right. That way they're not, the umpire doesn't mistake or think that they're actually going to second base. That is actually in the rule, as far as, the umpire clearly has to see that the runner is trying to make second base or trying to go to second base. If they make a legal feint towards second base, then the runner is liable to be put out and must get back to first base and be on the bag before he can be tagged out. But obviously, if he overruns the base and then is, turns counterclockwise to come back to the bag, and he's obviously clearly not trying to get to second base, he is not liable to be put out. However, if you overslide second base, third base, and miss and you're tagged while you're off the bag, of course you're out no matter what. There is rules in the definition about the pivot foot for a pitcher. Obviously, we're kind of going a little bit just alphabetically here. Pitcher, pitch, pivot foot. Obviously, we know the pitcher is the guy on the pitcher's mound, and in contact with the pitcher's plate. The pivot foot is generally the same as the throwing arm. I haven't seen a pitcher throw any other way in my career on a field. If you see one, I'd love to see a video of it. But generally speaking, if you're a right-handed pitcher, your right foot is your pivot foot, and that is the one that's in contact with the pitcher's plate, as read here in the rule book. A pitcher's pivot foot is the foot that with the pitcher contacts the pitcher's plate when he delivers the ball. Just want to clear that. That's rule section 28, article 6 in rule 2. So if you're a left-handed pitcher, your left foot if you're your left-handed pitcher, your left foot is the pivot foot that is in contact with the pitcher's plate. I have a separate video that talks about where, although some of that actually is different now with the most recent rule book, there are different interpretations of that. That actually is a good topic for a future video as well, to kind of update that video that I made last year. It's actually one of my more popular videos on the channel, relatively speaking, of course. Runners, retired runners, obviously a retired runner is somebody who's put out on the bases. Double play, squeeze play, those are all kind of scoring definitions. A slide, here we go, this is a good one. So a slide is a legal slide, can be either feet first or head first in high school baseball. If a runner slides feet first, at least one leg and buttock must be on the ground. If a runner slides, he must slide within reach of the base with either a hand or a foot. A runner may slide a run in a direction away from the fielder to avoid making contact or altering the play of a fielder. That you don't see that too often. Generally happens around the base. If it's a legal slide, a runner using, for example, a crossbody, a roll, or pop-up slide on a fielder, raised leg is higher than the fielder's knee when the fielder is in a standing position. A runner goes beyond the base and then makes contact with or alters the play of a fielder. That's so like if you're trying to break up a double play and you slide through the bag and trying to slide into a fielder. Generally in high school, that's going to be an automatic force play slide rule violation. The runner on a force play does not slide on the ground and is in a direct line between the two bases. Generally speaking, slides got to be legal. There's a lot of information about illegal slides. Some things that are legal in major league rules are not legal in high school rules, so definitely read up on that and talk about, and there's lots of information in this rule book that talks about, your case book that talks about a lot of illegal type slides. So definitely check this section, this section 32 in your case book about that. Stolen base, strike zone, so definition of the strike zone, obviously this is the one that's kind of wiggled room for different umpires. It's space over home plate, top of which is halfway between the batter's shoulders and waistline, so right about here. Right, I'd say it's like, below the letters, and generally speaking, depending on the uniform, obviously, you're going to make that judgment call, but generally right in the midpoint. And then right at the bottom being the knees, where he assumes his natural batting stance. So if they're going to go Jeff Bagwell on you, you got to obviously take that into consideration, that certain heights are going to be different if they are excessively crouching. Strike zone is obviously open to interpretation. All umpires, whether they realize it or not, have a slightly different strike zone. Substitutions, it's covered in Rule 3. Anytime there's somebody that comes in place for another substitute. High school baseball does have a re-entry rule for starters, so note that in your lineup card. Generally speaking, most umpires will, when there's a substitution for a starter, they will circle the starter and then write the substitute above, or the number or the name of the substitute. And then if that player re-enters, they just cross off the substitute, so the substitute's out. But then the player that has re-entered, you have noted that it is a re-entry. So if they were moved again, then you can cross that name out on your scorecard. Touching the ball, base or runner, wild pitch, and playing field, those are all kind of the summaries like that. And there's a lot of stuff in Rule 2, like I said, that's not really too relevant for officials, but we've kind of gone over some of the more common ones. You may get questions about those in your refresher exam, but definitely just reference those in your rule book. Generally speaking, the rules that I went over are the ones that you're going to see on your refresher test or rules exam. So there will be more future videos. We'll be talking about base running awards, dead balls, things like that in future videos here on the channel. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for making it all the way to the end of this, and thanks for being a subscriber to Umpire Zones if you're a subscriber, and thanks for being a loyal follower over the past few years. Hope they have a wonderful day. Don't forget to be awesome, everybody.